God handpicked a young teenage girl to save and rescue his people. Learn about this extraordinary woman today on Zola Levitt Presents.
From the beginning, our Creator revealed His will to the common man. Individuals who listened to His call and responded in obedience. From the first Hebrew Avraham to the culmination of salvation in Messiah Himself. The Lord faithfully intervenes with His divine deliverance.
Shalom, friends, and thank you for joining us today on Zola Levitt Presents. I'm David Hart.
I am Kirsten Hart.
Jeffrey Seif.
It's all about Esther today. What a great story of Esther.
It is, and I've just got to say, I'm a woman, I'm a girl. I think that's obvious.
No.
Right? But this is a little bit rough for me. I know we talk about beauty treatments, but she was a young teenage girl snatched out of her home, taken to a palace, and she never knew she'd even go back home. It was...
Keep talking, girl. Like, what do I know about women? You tell us about this. Tell us about her, and you drive this one home.
Well, we think about all the beauty treatments, and then she went through such wonderful things, but it was rough. I mean, if the king didn't pick her, one person out of 400 girls, she'd be in the concubine house for the rest of her life. But
this
for
is
such
an
a time
interesting
as this.
story here. Yes,
It is.
for such a time as this.
Let's go to our drama today, our dramatic reenactment, the story of Esther, followed by teaching with Dr. Jeffrey Seif.
Mordecai, Esther's cousin, was among the captive Jews in Shushan. When Esther's parents had died, Mordecai had taken her as his own daughter and raised her, caring for her deeply.
והמלך מינה פקידים בכל הממלכה על מנת שיוכלו לאסוף את כל הנערות היפות אל ארמון שושן, לחסותו של הגיא, סריס המלך. והנערה אשר תרצה את המלך תהא מלכה במקומה של ושתי. נסיכתי, אולי מלכה את, אך מעל הכל זכרי כי יהודיה עמך.
And so it was that Esther was taken before Haggai, the guardian of the king's harem, and she was pleasing to him. It would take 12 months of preparation before Esther would appear before the king. Attended to by 7 maidens, she would receive 6 months' treatment with oil of myrrh, and then another 6 months' treatment with perfumes and cosmetics. Esther had never looked so lovely.
Okay, I've heard it and you've heard it. Quote, "The Lord works in mysterious ways." And ain't that the God's honest truth? Deliverance comes in different ways on different days. In this program, deliverance comes through a beauty contest. And the winner is Esther, as it says in the text. Chapter 2, verse 17 of the book that bears her name. Now the king loved Esther more than all the other women. And by the way, there were others trying for the job. So he placed the royal crown upon her head and made her queen. And thus began a very interesting drama, one that we're going to explore as we consider deliverance, how it came through a woman named Esther. You gotta love it. The Bible is so interesting. I think personally preachers that make it boring ought to be sued for malpractice. It is a very cool story. Instead of preachers engineering various sermons, I get that. I think it's important just to tell the story. You know, at least get the story out first, and then we can explore what we want to do with it. In this case, this story of redemption is played out against the backdrop of a drunken king who embarrassed his main queen and then felt disrespected by her, prompting him then to look for a replacement. So word goes out, and there's a woman named Hadassah, and her guardian, Mordecai, puts her up to it and says, look, you ought to try out for this, I think. Something tells me you're in for something good. He prompts her to do it. So she does. And she goes through the whole warm-up process. All these girls come, they're applying for the job. There's a season of beautification, and then they have an opportunity to present to the king with whatever they want. It all comes on loan. You want a nice Rolex? Why not? Yes, we have some diamonds from Neiman Marcus. You're going to love them. Everybody dressed up right to the hilt. This woman, Hadassah, however, when it came turn for her, rather than deck out in all the regalia, she stood out because of her kind of simplicity, and thus a beauty was able to shine that wasn't obfuscated by diamonds and pearls and gold. Not that I'm amiss to all that. I like to say I like to keep my wife in diamonds and furs, but the point is here, with this woman it's a little different. We read in chapter 2, verse 15, the following. When the turn came for Esther, the daughter, to go in, we're told she did not ask for anything except for what the guardian, we're told, said, here, listen, let's just go minimal. And that's the way she did it. The net result in verse 17, we're told, and it's the verse that I just read, I'll say it again. Now the king loved Esther more than all other women, and she won his grace and favor more than all the other maidens. The concept of chosen people doesn't mean better than. I don't know that this woman herself necessarily is better than other women, but she's chosen in the sense she gets the attention of the principal. And he gives her grace and extends favor, subsequent to which he placed the royal crown upon her head. It's a great story. It's an old story, one that we're going to explore as we look more at deliverance in the book of Esther.
אם זה מרצה את המלך, שייכתב שהאנשים האלה יושמדו. ואני אשלם 10,000 כיכרות כסף לעוסקים במלאכה.
שמור את כספך. האנשים האלה הם שלך. עשה בהם כרצונך.
לכל המושלים ושומרי החוק בממלכה. בהתאם לצו המלך, מוכרז בזאת כי בי"ג באדר יושמדו כל היהודים. כל גבר, כל אישה וכל ילד יומתו ורכושם יילקח. יום זה מאושר בטבעת המלך.
אבל גם היא יהודייה. אמור לאסתר שגם היא תומה. היא ובית אביה יושמדו. אמור לאסתר במילים אלה, עליה לגשת אל המלך בזמן שכזה.
אמור למרדכי לאסוף את כל היהודים ולצום. לא לאכול או לשתות במשך 3 ימים, לילה ויום. אני אעשה את אותו הדבר, ואלך אל המלך בניגוד לחוק. ואם אמות, אז אמות.
It's a classic story replete with a heroine, and of course it wouldn't be a story if it didn't have a villain. His name is Haman. Did that shock you? Well, by the way, every time his name is mentioned in the synagogue, we get this. Everyone goes boo and turns these groggers around. In fact, once a year, we read the book. There's an expression that's used among Jewish people, the whole Megillah, the whole story. People don't realize the word Gila is the word for scroll. And the Megillot are the scrolls. And the book of Esther is brought out in the synagogue. And it's read, and every time we hear the villain Haman, boo, we get this. Every time we hear of the heroine, Esther, yay, and Mordecai, yay. It's a very interesting story. And by the way, it's the Jewish version of Halloween in the sense everybody dresses up, not just the children. Even the parents dress up, and everybody acts foolish. Not only do the children party, and you know how kids can be kids, they're outdone by their parents who act absolutely obnoxious. Every time we hear the name Haman and so forth, it really is a festive atmosphere. And why is that? There's a story here where Jews found themselves between a literal rock and a hard place. Haman used his influence to set in motion that which would result in the destruction of all the Jews in the empire. And that's an age-old story, by the way. People have been wanting to wipe out Jews for a long time. I think it's spiritual more than material, and I say that because pound for pound, look, you know, we have our scoundrels, but the Jews were really not a bad lot. And if someone's guilty, they get arrested like everyone else and have to answer for their crimes. But Jews really do tend to be decent. Despite all that, door to door, from generation to generation, people try and kill us. And so it is Jews celebrate this story, not because it's good news for the Jews, but it's a reminder that God raises up a deliverer. And I say that because unbeknownst to Haman, the new queen, the woman in charge, she was a Hebrew. Mordecai sends words and said, "Hun, listen, you know, maybe, just maybe, you've got to step up and weigh in on this to turn this around." And this is where you get in the story, you know, maybe this woman was chosen for such a time as this. At first she was reluctant, but then she stepped up. And though she wasn't supposed to go to the king, unless she was invited, she said, "Look, I'm going to do it." And in chapter 4, verse 16, she says, "Listen, I'm going to go to the king, even though it's not according to the law. And if I perish, I perish." I mean, if he wipes me out because I violated a principle, so be it. But I'm going to step into the gap. Thank God. God raises up redeemers in generation, from generation to generation, and I'm certainly pleased that he used Esther for such a time as this.
Our resource this week, the series Esther, For Such a Time as This, on DVD. This 8-part series presents the biblical account of the young, beautiful Jewish woman who becomes the Queen of Persia. When Esther is confronted with murderous racial hatred, she allows herself to be used by God and saves the Jewish people from genocide. Contact us for the DVD series, Esther, For Such a Time as This.
Hi, thanks for watching Zola Levitt Presents. You know, besides our television program, you can also reach us at levitt.com, as well as following us on Facebook or Twitter. And of course, we'd love to receive your mail, and as always, you can call us. We love to hear your voice at 1-800-WONDERS. And don't forget, your donations are what enable us to keep going. Thank you so much.
We have more dramatic reenactments that we want to bring you, Bible stories that come to life. We can't do that without your financial support. We're here today to say thank you. Right now, let's go back to our story, our dramatic reenactment with Esther.
Pur, a simple cube-like object. Pur had been used to determine the date of death for every Jew in the Persian Empire. Now, 1 year later, Mordecai considers a brighter day.
אחי היהודים, צערנו הפך לשמחה. ימי האבל שלנו נהפכו לטובה. נזכור מיום זה ואילך את יום ה-14 של אדר וגם את ה-15. יום של חגיגות ושמחה. המן שהטיל פור נגדנו הובס. מכשיריו עתה יופנו נגדו. כל דור מיום זה יזכור ויחגוג את ימי פורים אלה.
ויתרה מכך, אני מחזקת את דברי מרדכי. ימי פורים לא יימחקו מהעם היהודי, וזיכרונם לעולם לא יפוג.
In English, we speak of rolling the dice. It speaks of just taking a risk and throwing it out there. Well, it happened in antiquity as well. In fact, the word pur, as in Purim, comes from a word for lot. They had a way of determining when to do things by throwing the dice and seeing when it landed. Well, they threw the dice to see when it landed. They looked to determine when to kill all the Jews. Happily, however, God had a plan to turn that around. The turnaround came through a woman. And it wasn't just her decree that saved them, it was her decree that gave them permission to fight for themselves, to make a spirited defense. Once the king issued a decree for a war, well, then it had to live out, but here the Jews were allowed to push back, and indeed they did. We're explicit in the text, by the way, the author gives voice in no uncertain terms, that they offered a spirited defense and held it all back. By the way, that which was permitted in antiquity needs to similarly be permitted in modernity. And I mention that because you can read the biblical story. In chapter 9, we're told the Jews assembled and they were able then to lay hands on those bent on their demise. I'm paraphrasing it, but it's there in 9:2. I'm not inventing it. The reason why I mention that is there is a wicked invention today, and that is the Jews don't have a right to defend themselves in the land. We should just be sheepish and let the world roll over us like a freight train. Well, after 2,000 years, Jews are back in the land providentially, and we're not minded to give it up so easily. And my hope and prayer is that women and men who are informed by biblical virtue will stand behind the Jewish right to be in the land and the Jewish right to make a spirited defense for themselves while being there. We're told here in chapter 9, verse 2, that those bent on their demise enjoyed no good success. We're told, and I'm explicit now, not just inferential, no one was able to stand against them, for fear of them had fallen on all the peoples round about. And you know what? Same today as yesterday, because history tends to repeat itself. When we look at deliverance, we see that God raises up a person. You wouldn't expect that person to be the person, but the fact that they exist, it means everything. Not everyone understands it. For some, Jesus was just some Jewish Palestinian who died 2,000 years ago, and some myth circulated about his resurrection subsequent to that. He doesn't mean something to them. but Jesus, the Jewish personality, means something to me, and I hope he means something to you. The gospel's not some insignificant story, it's a turnaround story. And Yeshua came to facilitate a great redemption, not so much political, but definitely spiritual and personal for people like me and you.
A lot of people downplay teenagers and say, oh, that generation. Esther was a beautiful teenager, but boy, she was smart. And she took a lot of risks. Remember the phrase, for such a time as this. But she took a lot of risk in doing what she did to save the people of Israel.
She wasn't altogether sure which way it was going to turn, and she did put herself in harm's way. Most people avoid that in life.
Right, because it is too risky. And what could have happened to her, she could have been killed. If she approached the king and he didn't want to hear her, you know, onto the next concubine, on to the next girl.
It takes a little courage to kind of press into the darkness, yes, David?
Right. And you know what, I'm thinking about our wives right now, that they have a strong influence in our world today. Your wife, my wife, she speaks all around the country, just like Esther did.
And to that point, I just think it takes a lot of courage just to become a wife. And I'm not saying that because women are watching. I'm saying that because I honestly believe it.
Right, I was 24 when I married you. I was already a woman. Here's Esther, a young teenage girl. Yes. You know, I mean, there's so many questions about a teenager girl. What do I want to be when I grow up? What is my future? And Esther didn't have any of that choice anymore. But she did have a choice how she was going to handle what she did for the Hebrew people.
That's true. She was in good shape herself there in the palace, just kind of chilling with all the perfumes with her rich husband. She could have just avoided the whole mess. Good point.
And then along comes Mordecai and saying, and that's the famous phrase, or the verse, for such a time as this. But who knows that you came into this place? And I just want to personally speak to every woman that's watching this program today. Who knows, for such a time as right now, wherever you are sitting and watching this program, that God doesn't desire to use you in this time in your life to do great things for him and for his kingdom. One teenage girl can change the future.
That's right. More on this story. We'll be right back.
Our resource this week, the series Divine Deliverance on DVD. These 12 programs examine how the Lord offered a message of salvation through significant Bible characters, beginning with faithful Abraham and ending with the Messiah himself. Each program includes location teaching, discussions of applications, plus the music of Zola Levitt. Contact us for the DVD series Divine Deliverance.
For insightful perspectives on Israel and Bible prophecy, ask for our free monthly newsletter, The Levitt Letter. At levitt.com you can read the newsletter, watch the TV program, or visit our online store. Stay current with us on social media via Facebook and Twitter. Come with us on a tour of Israel or Petra, or a cruise to Greece and Ephesus. Please contact us for more information.
We've alluded to Esther and her beauty treatments. There is a beauty treatment in the Holy Land that is like none other. It is called Dead Sea mud. That's something that we get to experience on a Zola tour. It's one of my favorite places in the whole world. We get in the water. We don't swim in the water, but we get to apply this beauty treatment all over our skin, and it's something you won't want to miss. Come on a Zola tour. Experience God's best beauty treatment in his land. Now, here is a song from Esther.
השם צילך על יד ימינך יומם השמש לא יככה וירח בלילה השם ישמורך מכל רע ישמור את נפשך השם ישמור צאתך ובואך מעתה ועד עולם מעתה ועד עולם.
You don't have to understand the meaning of those Hebrew words to know that that song is beautiful. So fitting. Esther was beautiful, was she not?
She was, and she was very smart and
Yes.
wise and open to what God wanted to do with her life.
Yes.
She was called, but also born for that position.
Yes, she was, and she utilized her influence in that position. I tell my wife, Barry, that she's just beautiful inside and out, and great gal, Esther.
Right, and my personal takeaway is don't underestimate what God can do with your life. She, through her decisions and what she did, saved his people.
Right.
Just like the Savior that came and saved his people.
Amen to that. And salvation, deliverance comes from different places. And here we're talking about it on Zola Levitt Presents. And as you go now, Sha'alu Shalom Yerushalayim.
Pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Our monthly newsletter, The Levitt Letter, is free and full of insightful articles and news commentary from a messianic perspective. Visit levitt.com to find our newsletter, along with current and past programs, our television schedule, and much more.
Don't forget to order this week's resource by calling 1-800-WONDERS, or you can purchase it from our store at levitt.com.
Your donations to Zola Levitt Ministries help these organizations bless Israel.
Thanks again for joining us this week. Zola Levitt Ministries and this television program depend on tax-deductible donations from viewers like you.
This has been a paid program brought to you by Zola Levitt Ministries.